Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am delighted to be joined by Ian Conroy all the way from New Zealand and Lawrence Connolly dialing in from the Skylark Bar. Good afternoon, gentlemen. It is the pre-season, but, we carry on regardless. There is plenty to discuss, and today the big talking point will be around, again, who is speculated to be coming to Celtic Park to fill the big gloves left by Joe Hart, Lawrence. And I think that when we're talking about priorities, there's plenty of areas of the team that need to improve, but we need to get this one right. And if you go right back to, I would say, probably Boric in terms of goalkeepers, I think each of the goalies, other than the anomaly of the season that we didn't win the league, has shown just how important the goalkeeper position is for us. And Joe Hart is the latest in a long line and a succession of tremendous goalkeepers. Lawrence.
Yeah, not just a tremendous goalkeeper, but what an ambassador for the club, And you see that video, man? I think he was on holiday, stopping a busker to sing some Celtic songs with him. Absolutely.
Who was getting married? Is it Greg Taylor that was getting married over in Croatia? Yes. Is that right?
No, Joseph Juranovic in Croatia. I think Greg was in Spain.
Oh, they get about these guys. I've lost touch. Yeah.
Lost track. Yeah, listen, I wouldn't be signing any other player until we sign a goalkeeper. And it's so crucial that we get someone. I'd prefer someone that was going to be a keeper for the next 4, 5, 6 years to make a substantial investment there. But I suppose the more money you're investing, the higher the risk if it doesn't work out. Because the last time we spent a bit of money on a keeper, didn't work out quite as we had planned.
No, it didn't. I'm going to bring in our fourth contributor of the day, dialing in from Japan. It's Liam Carrigan. There he is. Liam, sporting one of probably about 500 football jerseys you've got in your collection. Every time I see you, it's a different jersey, Liam.
Well, just humour me for a wee second here. I picked up an absolute bargain yesterday.
What's coming? What's this?
Samaras Celtic away shirt from 2009. Even got the patches on the sleeves. Yep, it's a match issue, and I got it for the equivalent of about 25 quid.
Incredible. So, what about the news, guys? Celtic's shirt sales. I'll come to you, and I know you were a big aficionado back in the day, and in fact, some of your old jerseys ended up in my book. It was interesting to find out, you and I talking about that. You had them in your collection at some point and ended up in the Celtic jersey book. But when you see that table of sales, global sales of football jerseys, I think Celtic are sitting 17th in that table. And it just shows you the power of the green and white hoops, the power of the Celtic brand worldwide, really, Ian, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it does. I think I just saw that news earlier before we came on air. And Liam, you mentioned earlier on in the group chat about PSG being the first time they've done it. I don't know if it's ever, or the first Nike team that have done it for eons to have the same jersey 2 seasons in a row, which seems unheard of. And that's probably the fact that we're 17th, and I think it was at 37 million euros or something we've made in terms of profit. That's probably due to the fact that we're churning out different jerseys, like three a season, But the hoops, of course, it is. It's wherever I've been in the world, you see a Celtic jersey or more than one Celtic jerseys. So our appeal is great. I do think that the marriage with Adidas helps it and complements it. It did with Nike as well, obviously the two big juggernauts, but I think obviously the Adidas partnership really does help us. But it helps us, it enhances our reputation, it enhances our reach.
No, it does. You've actually brought to mind, though, and I want to discuss this very briefly. I didn't plan to discuss this, but remember back in the day when things were a wee bit more, I don't know what you would say, simpler, probably, a wee bit more simple in life when it was pre-social media. And if you met somebody with a set of hoops, Lawrence, they were instantly your ally. And now we're in a situation where people fall out online. Fellow Celtic fans fall out with each other over a different opinion and all that carry on. That never used to happen, did it? You would see somebody in Spain wearing the hoops. They were instantly your mate.
Yeah, having a pint, 30 minutes later. Yeah, it's arguing on social media.
A few days later, in your case, Lawrence.
30 minutes, mate. 30 minutes, max. Second pint, an hour later. But no, I think there's a move to sports gear as leisure wear, isn't there? St. Mike Ashley there. He's done a sterling job in football, up here anyway. But Yeah, I think that's probably driven the more strips coming out, and there's a definite market for it. Look at the new top that came out. You could have bought it the same day from China. You know, the fake tops were released the same day as the official top. You know, those boys are pretty efficient. So,
again, I completely unrelated source. Somebody I know actually ordered the new top about 3 weeks before it came out. I'm not going to say who, but yeah, you know, just so we know, it was available.
Where was it?
I said there's a market out there for it, but it's expensive for families trying to keep up, and that's probably what's fueling the copies market, or we call it the tribute market. You know, replica strips. But
well, there's an interesting
thing somewhere, and
Lawrence,
you know, we're not catching up in the TV deal. Hopefully, the extra Champions League games helps us, but.
Yeah, but the TV deals, it's kind of out of our hands in terms of it being a league deal rather than a Celtic deal, which is frustrating for the club. But you've said something there in terms of all these sites that you can get the cheapies, the fakies. And the thing with that is, you look at the figure, you know, getting into number 17 globally. Imagine what the figure would be with all the fakes on top. It was like back in the day where, you know, you broke world records for European games. You broke European records, then it would be for the Leeds United semi-final. But imagine the actual attendance was given. It would have been a lot more than 136,000 because the people jumping all the turnstiles, Lawrence.
I'm thinking of a fake strip. Do you remember Copper Sports brought out a Celtic strip way back, like 80 or 81? It was just the hoops, but Copper Sports, I think, was the only thing they ever done.
Right. I can't.
It's nowhere near as good as the modern fake ones.
Right, you might see a user popping up in the comments from time to time called Barry McCluskey, and Barry gave me one of, if not the most rare jersey in the book, right? Talking of football jerseys. We didn't plan to, Liam. This is what you do, popping up with your vast array of jerseys. And he told me this story that in and around the time that Umbro were renegotiating the deal with Celtic in the early 90s, they kind of put it out there that they were looking for a new manufacturer. And one of the manufacturers that came to them was Gola, guys. Gola, right? In the early 90s. And of course, what they had to do is they had to create a range of prototypes that they would present to the club to say, this is going to be your new hoops. And the hoops were basically like static hoops, jaggy ones, right? And then there was another kit that was like a Harlequin effort and all this, and there was training gear and everything else. Now, I forget where they were based. I don't know where Gola were based, somewhere down south. They didn't get the deal, right? They didn't get the Celtic deal, thankfully. One of the jerseys ended up in my book, and they sold all the Celtic prototypes in their Gola shop, you know, almost the seconds. And Barry picked up this jersey, which ended up in my book. Can you imagine that? Gola. By the way, they were shockers, but great in terms of the history of the jersey. Loads of great comments coming through. We're talking about the priority being the goalkeeper. We've already spoken, of course, about another really important part of business being getting Matt O'Reilly to stay at the club. We'll be talking about that as well. Parkhead Boy, we go out at 12:30 every single day. The stream is set up a wee bit early just so that everybody can get in and get settled down before we go live at 12:30. But it's 12:30 and it has been 12:30 for the last 4 years, and it will continue on a daily basis to be 12:30. So thank you for tuning in. Now, Paddy starts off by saying it's a soggy way Ardoyne, which is a shame. I mean, we've had our 2 or 3 days of sunshine, Paddy. But he then gets into a conversation with Chris, a.k.a. Double Denim, who modelled last week the Kevin McDermott Orchestra Levi's jacket. Now, this show is not going to be renamed Acsomistas, because I don't know how many fashionistas there are in the contributor base. However, what's then happened is Double Denim has been speaking to Paddy, and Paddy has said, auction it for wee Jamie, and I'll buy it, and he's offered £100.
Oh, brilliant.
£100. Right. So there's your starting bid. If anybody wants to beat Paddy to the Kevin McDermott Orchestra tour jacket, it's a denim Levi jacket, only 6 made. The bid's £100. If no one outbids you, Paddy, the jacket is yours, my friend. So brilliant, well done. And Jungle Line, just before we get kicked back onto the football chat, who was a bold boy, naughty boy that got banned? Was it Red Scotland? Yes, it was, Jungle Lion. I don't mind people disagreeing and all that kind of stuff, but when you start criticising and offending individuals who put in their good efforts and their time to Acsom, then it can't be tolerated. It then came on in a pseudonym, done it again. Bye-bye. Simple as that. I mean, we're all here to talk about Celtic, not to talk about the fact that dinosaurs didn't actually happen and it was a Freemasonry conspiracy. But, I put up with all that nonsense for months. But the minute you start targeting Acsom contributors, see you later, man. That's not the kind of behaviour we would expect. John Little, howdy, guys. Anyone else thinking that we dodged a bullet and not getting Sidney Van Hooydonk? He chose Norwich, and the rest is history. This will lead us, Ian, onto the conversation around your man, Adam Ida, right? So obviously there's a lot of chat, there's a lot of discussions and business happening behind the scenes that we'll be unaware of. But Ida and Bernardo are going to be two of the big talking points this pre-season. I've already put it out there. I want both of them. I want us to spend £12 million or whatever it takes, bring them in. It's a try before you buy. We know what they can do. There's no settling in period, Ian. It's a bit of a no-brainer for me. We take the A2 in. Obviously, the goalie's a priority, and we take it from there. But yeah, we dodged the bullet with Sidney Van Hooydonk. Of course we did.
Seems to be. And I'd read that Brendan had had his eye on Ida when he was at Leicester. So he knew about him before, didn't he? So it wasn't an unknown quantity to him, but obviously it was to us fans. But as soon as he came in, I watched his showreel. I remember watching his showreel, thinking he looked a decent player, and then hearing him speak. I mentioned this on a pod, sort of early days, and it just bore fruit. It came to fruition. He hit the ground running, as we all know, and he just reports I saw to do in the newspapers and how true they are. It was sort of 5 million mark was quoted. So if that's the case, or 10 million for the two of them. But yeah, the try before you buy it worked with Jota and Carter Vickers to a T. I think it's a really good model. Especially when the board are having to spend a bit more than they'd like to. Over that 3 million mark. So the sort of Jota's, Carter Vickers, that £6 million mark. It's enough to sort of, I suppose, satisfy them and give them that security that it's a decent outlay.
You know this though, that the try before you buy. Yes, it happened with Carter Vickers and Jota. Also happened with Edward. Liam, because we've been stung a few times. I mean, Lauren speaks there about Vasilis Bakas. He didn't name him. I don't know. Is he another guy who cannot be named on the show because he was so bad, such a man? The thing with Bakas, right? The 5 million figure, Bakas 5 million. If you actually look at it, I think the figure that we paid was 3.75. And there was an additional payment if he met a threshold of appearances, which he never met. And that was one of the reasons why we were able to tear up his contract, because we had kind of had it in our minds, it's going to cost us £5 million. And it had probably eventually did once we tore his contract up. But the fee itself was probably a wee bit lower than that. But we have shelled out big fees, Liam. We've shelled out £7 million for Chris Julian before he had played for Celtic as a loan player. So I just think it depends. As a rule, absolutely, it works for us, doesn't it? And if we are a little bit suspicious of putting out big transfer fees until we've bought the player, played the player as a loanee, I'm okay with that. If we bring in 2 or 3 loanees this pre-season and they're of that calibre, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I think the thing is with the with the loanees as well is depending on how good a season they have during that period, you can then go back and negotiate the price as well. I mean, look at Bernardo, right? I think we all agree the guy's a good player.
Yeah.
Is he a £6 million player? That's where I think there's a debate to be had. But if we can go to Benfica and say, look, the guy was good, but he's not a world beater yet. Why don't you make that 4 million and we'll give you a 15% sell on, for example? Mm-hmm. That would be the way to frame it. And I think that's a good deal for Benfica as well, because they've already said the guy's going to be a back number if he stays there. So I think they're making it clear that they want him out the door. And Celtic have made it clear they want him if the price is right. The player himself has been on social media saying he's very keen to stay in Glasgow. Loves it here, loves the people. And I think that it's just good for all parties if we can make this deal happen. But the try before you buy, if a player comes in and sets the heather alight, you say, right, okay, sign that guy right now. But it also works the way that if a guy like Bernardo comes in and has a decent but not not dazzling season, it then gives you scope to go back and negotiate the price. So that's another aspect to it where I think we are going to benefit this year, because he does another one. I'd like to see him signed, but if Norwich are going to insist on the 7 or 8 million that is being mooted, then I would say, well, we could get as good for less if we go elsewhere.
Well, that's a good discussion point, Liam. I think had we gone in January, right, and when we were all kind of looking at that league table, thinking there's no much separating the top two, and we had shelled out 6 million for Ida, there would have been quite a few gasps, I would suggest, right, at that time. If we were to announce his signature in this pre-season, Ian, and it was 6 million quid, right? But as Liam says, I do think there's bargaining to be had on both players' deals. I don't think there would be any raised eyebrows at Ida coming to the club now for the 6 million. So that's where the loan to buy kind of thing works for us. And even though it's not in the deal, a loan with an option to buy, there's always an option to buy, isn't there?
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't put an option to buy him, because you could have, at least then it's secure. If he has a blinder, which he has done, the price is set. Whereby if he doesn't really set the header alight, but we see something in him, we've got that opportunity to try and negotiate down a little bit, as we're trying to do with Bernardo. You've obviously got that silly English tax as well, that you've got to contend with, even in the Championship. It's prevalent, that the prices are inflated. But I think I wouldn't cry at all. I mean, I know Chris Sutton came out and said it could be up as much as 8 or 9 million. That Norwich demand for him, and I think even at that, the age he's at as well, I think I would go for it. We've got money in the bank, and rather that than spend bulk at 9 million, spend 5 million on another striker and waste another 9 on £3 million players, so which is probably what we'll do. So I'm all in on just trying to get him at all costs, really, and because he's in the door, he's part of the team. He's Irish, he's a Celtic fan. He ticks all these boxes, and it's like, not that that's a prerequisite for you to come and be a success at our club, but it helps, doesn't it? I was watching something. It was the Frank McAvenny. It was the Frank McAvenny on a podcast. And it was saying
that the Icons. Was that the Icons?
The Icons, yeah. And he did Sacked in the Morning as well. So I listened to 2 of them. My mega hero, Frank McAvenny. But when he was saying about how Billy McNeil assembled that centenary team that we all know and love, Rangers were spending shed loads of money, weren't they? Mm-hmm. And Billy McNeil identified, it was like, we're going for Celtic fans. It's a centenary season, and he went for dyed-in-the-wool Celtic fans where they could. So either I'd put him in that bracket. He's kind of seemed that dyed-in-the-wool Celtic fan. He's got a bit about him, and he's got more to sort of learn and offer. And under Brendan Rodgers, I think he can only flourish.
I think it's a great point, because in the modern game, Ian, right, it's almost as if that type of thing is probably hardly even thought about. But what we've seen last season, Lawrence, is what happens when you bring, let's say, 9 players in with no real connection to the football club. Now, we can say Celtic fan, but no connection to the football club. No real understanding of what it means to draw a game at home, because that's not acceptable in domestic football when you're at Celtic Football Club. So I totally agree with what Ian says, but it seems to have been lost a bit in the modern game, Lawrence. It's not something that we really put any kind of weight on, because it's almost as if everybody's got the price. If Kieran Tierney can leave Celtic, anybody can leave Celtic, and there is a sense of that, isn't there?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a different market, isn't it? We get players from all around the world. Players travel more. The number of players we've got from the Far East. That never happened in the past. You were predominantly, Scottish team, and that alone would give you a number of Celtic fans in it. You had a number of converts like Alfie Conn. We all like him. He's all right now. So I think it's it's good that Ida's there. Whether it should be a buying decision just now, I'm not too sure. But Norwich can make noises about wanting 9 million if they want. I don't see too many people queuing up to buy him just now.
No.
Does he fit in their team? I think they're in a strong-ish position on it. It's definitely for negotiation, because you're saying, well, they're not going to play him. What are you going to do with him? Ida's come out and said he wants to come, so players, a few seasons back, we had a few players we kept, but we shouldn't have done. We should have sold them and let them go. Mm-hmm. It's not good for the club. I'd like to see him join. I don't think I'd spend kind of 8 or 9 million on him. I know we've got a lot of money just now. I can't see he's spending any more than kind of 30 million summer transfer window. So you're spending almost a third of that in either at that time. What other kind of striker could you get for 9 million? That you've got to ask, what's the value? Liam touched on it. Is it, if Norwich are going to hold out for 9, well, who else is available for 9?
It's just going back to what Ian said, though, Lawrence. It's the market, the Championship in England. I mean, the thing is, a lot of those clubs within that sphere, within that pond, that pool, will look at what he's done in Scottish football and just shrug their shoulders. You know what I mean?
So it won't have added value down there.
Exactly.
In their eyes, he'll just be going. He's a guy that played for your reserves and scored a couple of goals when he got his chances for you, but not many. So I don't think there's a lot of teams kind of vying over him just now. So it's kind of up to Norwich to. They're going to want to maximise what they can get from it. And we know Celtic like to screw every penny out of every deal. Yeah.
Look how much Ollie McBurney's amassed in transfers. And it's like, as long as I've got a hole in my backside, he'll never be a footballer, in my opinion. But he's amassed some transfer fees, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. But the two Ollies have, because Oliver Burke, as we sit here right now, is still Scottish football's most expensive footballer in the history of the sport. Where is he now? Where is Ollie? But he's only 27, right? He's the second best thing to come out of Kirkcaldy after Jockey Wilson. And he's currently last known to be at Birmingham City on loan. He's at Werder Bremen. Now, he has got the best agent since Colin Kazim Richards here, Ollie Burke.
Yeah.
And I think it's a hypnotist, isn't it? It must be a hypnotist, their agent.
We're going to have to buy Kieran Tierney to make him the most expensive Scottish footballer of all time. But listen, you mentioned something there, Lawrence, about prices and all the rest of it. It would not surprise me if Norwich are trying to hold out for £8 or £9 million from Celtic. Would I pay that? I'm not so sure, right? And I do go back to the times where we were assembling a side under Martin O'Neill, and we spent £6 million on City and all the rest of it. And you look at the price of inflation, God only knows what that would be now. But what that did is it sparked off a period of domination on the park. And you and I have had this discussion, Lawrence, about, obviously the roots of that were Fergus McCann taking over the club. But in terms of dominating in Scottish football, since our kind of poor, dark period in the 90s, Martin O'Neill's team kick-started it, and it's not stopped. And every so often, I just think you need to kind of turbo boost it, Liam. And if what Lawrence says there, 30 million quid, if that's what we spend, and we spend it well, because we spent 20 last summer and it was misspent, and we spend it well, and it's not part of a sale in terms of like Matt O'Reilly, it's not part of that sale. It's £30 million investing in the squad. We don't have to do it next summer. It seems to be at the moment we really need a refresh. Some might say a rebuild, but we won't have to do it next summer again. So it does benefit you in the long run, doesn't it? If you do the buy-in right.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, like I was listening to some other podcasts and things today, and somebody made an interesting point. Said, well, to go back to the Bernardo thing for a second, just as an example, do you want to pay £6 million for a guy who's a squad player at the moment? Not to say he always will be a squad player at Celtic, but at the moment he's not a guaranteed starter. And that was this guy's argument, was like, well, do you really want to pay £6 million for a squad player? And my retort to that would be, well, in the Champions League, that's what you have to do. If we want to be a Champions League club, that is the market we have to operate in. We have to get used to spending that kind of money on a single player who's going to enhance the squad, not necessarily a guy who's going to walk into the first team. And that's a tough one to get your head around when you've been in in Scottish football for years, where to this day our biggest signing is £9 million, and yet we've sold players for 3 times that. So it's an entire change of philosophy is required if we're actually going to compete in Europe, because that's the money these people are paying, and we need to move away from these £2 or £3 million signings. Not to say you can't get a bargain if you know what you're doing, right? I mean, you can, but we need to start to accept the fact that, look, if you want a half-decent player who's proven a half-decent player, it's going to be upwards of 5 million. That is the situation now.
And that will not happen with our board. It will never, as long as that board are in situ, that I totally agree with you, Liam. That it has to happen, you know. It was like when Souness signed Johnson to try and smash that policy. It smashed the ceiling. We've got to do that in terms of outlay for players. Like you said, you know, we've 25 million in for players, but we don't spend it. And it's like, that is exactly what has to happen, especially with the champions. We're going to get left behind. We already have been to a degree with the tankings we keep getting. But with this board, it saddens me to say, they're not going to change. It's the culture that exists, and a leopard does not change its spots.
Another lock-in with Lawrence Connolly. There you go. Lawrence, so you had the lock-in at the old Skylark yet?
Well, there's been many, mate.
My word.
Yeah.
The way you looked up there as if to say that you're actually living, there's a bed over there, isn't there? You've been chucked out the house, you're living there because of the lock-in situation. The missus has just thought, I've had enough.
I think we'll see investment in players. You know, I think scouts are looking at higher quality of play. You know, we've got more Champions League games this season. The chairman's come out and said the money's no good in the bank. We've got more money to spend. And if nothing else, you know, sellers like Norwich will know that. We've got a lot of money in our bank. You know, and they'll be asking for more money. They know we're not skint. You know, we can't go into complete poverty. When they had, 70 million in the bank before season ticket sales. So I think we'll buy a higher quality of player. It's just getting it right. You know, making sure that the scouting do their job. You know, there are bargains out there, but that they're hard to find. And I think by and large, the recruitment team over the last 10 years, they've done a good job. And what they've brought in, when you look at the returns we've got for some of the players, it looks like O'Reilly might leave, but what was he, 1.5 million? What was Virgil van Dijk? What was Wanyama? So I think we'll see an investment, but only because of the bigger potential for the Champions League. The managers come out last season and the captain came out saying we're lacking quality. So I think, you know, Brendan will get more quality in. It's just hoping that we get more right than we get wrong, because it's risky, isn't it? Every play.
No, it is. It is. But you make a good point, Lawrence. It's not a case of saying we're rubbish at recruitment, because that's not right. That simply is not true. And it was only 2 pre-seasons ago that we did the CCV and Jota deals permanently. And that, I thought, at that time, showed a fair bit of ambition. I don't know what you think about it, but I don't think we followed it up. It's almost as if, there you go, we've done that, and then we can get away last pre-season with bringing in, inexpensive to a level. I mean, I know Narovski was 4.3, Lagerbielke 3 million. Accumulatively, it was a lot of money spent, but individually, it wasn't. And I think we tried to get away with it, Liam. And by the skin of our teeth, we did. But it was nothing to do with any of the guys we brought in. It was down to Brendan Rodgers, wasn't it?
Yeah. I can say that as one of Brendan Rodgers' biggest critics on here throughout the season. I'm delighted to have been proven wrong. I'm absolutely delighted that he turned that around and proved me wrong. But yeah, I don't want to say we got lucky, because we were the best team over the whole season, so we won the league. That's the way it is. But from the board point of view, what we've just been talking about, winning the league, I hope I'm wrong, but winning the league in their minds might think, oh, well, we don't need to invest because we won the league anyway.
That's the worry.
Aye. Yeah. That's what I'm really worried about.
Right. See, before we go back, sorry to
interrupt me, right? But just on that point, if we had a proper football department and structure, you know, behind the scenes, would that money have been better spent? I mean, you're right, Lawrence. It's still a risk. It's still hit and miss. But we haven't got that. We didn't have it behind the scenes. It was almost like even with Mark Lawwell, it was kind of skeleton staff, you know. And I know the Premier League, they have armies of people doing things, but it's a network, and it seems to be a fruition. You know, a lot of teams like Brighton's and the like. So I posit that we probably wouldn't have wasted as much, and we would have had more hits than misses if we had some proper professionals behind the scenes doing a job like that.
No, you're right. And by the way, you're talking about an army. You're right. Down south, that's what it's like. Did anybody see Roy Keane's comments on the masseur?
Yeah.
Did you see that? It was brilliant, man.
Relax.
And they want medals and all that. It was just tremendous. I love that level of insight and cynicism from Keano. And yes, it is linked to Celtic because he did play a few games for us. Stephen Donnelly, afternoon, boys and girls. I would like to think with the notice period Joe Hart gave, we have a goalkeeper identified and about to sign. Stephen, I would like to think so as well. Every time I speak to people in football who know a lot more than I do about the game, I speak about things like that, the processes of signing players. And I don't know if you had an opportunity, guys, to tune into the Jackie McNamara episode on Friday night of This Is Acsom. There's the big shameless plug. And I asked him about it as well. And he said, there are different ways. You've got like a process, I guess, Lawrence, that obviously you've spoken to individuals about scouting and obviously data analysis and presenting scouting reports to a gaffer who then ultimately should have the final word on it. But there's also occasions where you're just presented with an opportunity. And when you look at Matt O'Reilly, right, Matt O'Reilly was presented to Celtic from CAA base, and we picked up on it. He'd obviously had a period prior to MK Dons where he had taken a big risk, really, by walking away from a contract offered by Fulham, and then the lockdown happened. Turns out he's training with him and his old man out trying to keep fit, training, keeping the sharpness going. But he was out of the game for a number of months. He was presented to us, and I'm pretty sure a number of other clubs by the agency that he was signed up to. So now and again, it's going to happen, Lawrence, but it shouldn't be the rule. It should be the exception that a guy like that comes along and that lucky hit. The rule should be the structure, surely.
You have a number of different routes to market. You want to keep your door open to organisations like that presenting players to you. You don't want to shut and say, no, we've got the best structure. We'll find our own players. We don't need to speak to anyone.
Lawrence, it worked. City Group.
Yeah, but the thing is, you should have all those avenues open to you. Yeah. Just because you've got a great scout network doesn't mean you close your door on players' agents and say, don't come to us with players. We've got the scouts that will find them. So there's going to be a number of different ways. And for keepers coming in, I would hope we're looking at 5 or 6. Because we won't be the only team looking at them if they're any good. Let's be honest. So somebody might beat you to the punch, or they might think the other league's more attractive, the other club's got a better offer. So I think you would hope Celtic had at least 6 keepers that they've got full reports on.
Yeah.
It's the position we really need to fill quickly. I think once you've got that in, you can build from there. But, Joe's left a huge hole in the team and I think in the Celtic cart as well, because absolutely outstanding for the club. And, there's a guy that came just to play money, not play football, not for the money.
Yes.
He absolutely got the club. You saw that in his last game at Celtic Park and in the cup final. They secured the double. It's big. I was going to say shoes, but probably big gloves to fill. And we've absolutely got to get it right. Kelleher, I think, is going to be priced out of reach now. I think. It's
right, but see the 10.
I think Brendan wanted him
10 million. Right. So you do sign one player for 10 million, Lawrence. Is it Kelleher or either?
Would sign either for 10 million. Would I sign Kelleher for 10 million? I probably wouldn't pay 10. I don't think he's got enough games under his belt to justify 10 million. It's that English tax that Ian was talking about. What has he done to justify 10 million? So for me, I wouldn't buy either for 10 million.
Well, that's fair play. I'm just looking at, the reports around Liverpool selling players, and they're going to be looking for something like that. That's why I'm a wee bit surprised. Unless we can do this structure that Liam spoke about before, where you're saying, listen, there's a sell on, and, overall, it's a good deal for them. Kelleher's name isn't going away. There's been a few names linked to the club. Now, David Crine says he would pay up to 8 million for Ida. And
that's what concedes for Perth, mate. They've got money up that way.
Have they?
Yeah.
I wouldn't know how that feels. And by the way, here we go. Caps lock on, the Flying Haggis, supporting the channel. Celtic. Come on, you boys in green. Absolutely. And I could do it. And maybe around the globe, anybody tuning in could do the shouty bit after that as well. Thank you for getting involved. Hopefully you're having a cracking day. And Ronnie Glavin would have played with the aforementioned Alfie Conn, wouldn't he?
Yes.
I used to work with Ronnie at Nike.
Did you?
Right. Aye.
Oh, yes. Ronnie Glavin, what a player. We spoke about him last week when Jim was on. Because I had it in the back of my mind. He played in that Partick Thistle game in the League Cup final against Celtic, 1971. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they beat us 4-1. And Ronnie Glavin did indeed play. And he obviously went on to sign for Celtic, became a Barnsley Lion. By the way, I don't know if this is the Ronnie Glavin, but if it is, it's right, okay. So the song that you referenced, Lawrence, Alfie Conn, used to be, but he's all right now. Did we also sing that about Kenny Miller? I don't think we did. Nah,
I don't think so, mate. But I don't know if Kenny was as good as Alfie, perhaps.
No chance.
Perhaps that was the reason, mate.
No chance. Punching the crest and all that carry on. It was the agent who presented Ida to Celtic. Brendan said this himself. If that agent hadn't, where would we be? Yeah, no, sliding doors, isn't it? It really is. But as we were saying there's different avenues. Why block off having a great network of agents? Why block off having that brilliant relationship with Citigroup or CAA Base, as well as having a brilliant recruitment and data analysis department and scouting department? I think you just, like you say, Lawrence, you just cover all those bases.
Even when the agents present, your scout and your data analysis department's still got to do their due diligence, haven't they? They've still got, right, you can't just subject them. Listen, sign this guy, he's decent. You've got to do a bit of work in the background.
Surely that's never happened in the past, Lawrence. Surely.
Yeah, I think it happened with Rivaldo, didn't it? We wanted to do a trial just to check he was still good.
I know.
What we know about the former World Player of the Year? Yeah, you need to try out, mate.
Listen, Martin O'Neill had standards. The funny thing is, when I asked him about that, because we did a lot of trials back then. We had a lot of trialists during O'Neill's time. And the ones that I always quite liked the idea of was De La Pena and Danny. Remember, they came over and they played a couple of bounce games against Livingston and I'm going to say Dundee. And there's pictures out there of both players playing. Danny never kicked another ball professionally after that trial. Never played football again. He was only 26 at the time. De La Pena went on to, win cups and everything over in Spain. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And Martin O'Neill could not remember either of the two of them being on trial when I asked him. He remembered Rivaldo, but the other two, he was like, no idea. Don't know what you're talking about. Now,
what about George Amaral? Were you on board with him?
Was that Cadetti's pal?
Yeah, mate. 5,000 at Barrafield to watch the training.
Yeah. Were you there?
Yeah, I went.
Were you there? Was that after the pie tasting competition up at Parkhead that day?
Oh no, that was years before I was an official pie. Years before it.
By the way, that wasn't a dig at Lawrence. Lawrence was an official pie taster at Celtic Park. We'll maybe tell the story in more detail later on. Jim Kerr, great to hear from you, Jim. Jota, Tierney, Edouard, Ida, and Bernardo, goalkeeper, left back, centre half times two wingers. That's a transfer. Yes, that would be a transfer window. And interestingly enough, we had a wee chat this morning, guys, didn't we, about all the ex-Celts that keep getting linked to Celtic. I don't see as many Paddy Roberts links now, but it seems to have moved on to Edouard and Ayer and Tierney and Foster. Is that just lazy journalism, Liam Carrigan?
Yes, absolutely. It's the usual Scottish media putting two and two together and coming up with 1690.
Didn't do that when I've got something in my mouth there.
Sorry.
All over the screen. Thank you very much. Kevin Graham, listen, stream and buy the Henrik Larsson EP by Celtic Cross Collective, available on all platforms. This is not a shameless plug. Kevin Graham also informs us that the T-shirts are available on Acsom's website. Links to be found under this video and on the socials. And he goes on to say that all money raised will go to wee Jamie Tierney. So that's brilliant. We're selling records and we're selling denim jackets and we're raising cash in any way we possibly can. Ian Roy, Acsom, what's your views on Boston Lawal? He certainly looks like a player. I listed a few guys I would like to see retained and sent out on loan. He was one of them, alongside Adam Montgomery, Daniel Kelly, and Rocco Vata. I think we sign them all up. We make sure that they're all done and dusted. I know Montgomery's just signed a new contract. Joey Dawson, throw him in as well. But loan them back out, Liam. Get them game times next season. Game time, 30 games under their belt. And in Lawal's case, he needs to do it at a higher level than the third-tier English football. Rocco Vata, Kelly, and the others mentioned, Montgomery, Dawson. Even a loan deal within Scottish football might work. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Liam. Do we use our Admira Wacker tie-in? What's the level there?
I agree. Definitely, Lawal should be going out on loan. And I think ideally you're looking at English Championship or even lower half of the EPL if possible. Like someone like a Norwich or or maybe like a Sunderland or something. Are they Championship now? Aye, they are, aren't they? Anyway,
they were linked with Stephen Robinson, weren't they? Did you see that?
I think so. Aye.
Yeah.
But a relatively big club in English terms, maybe not in the Premier League, but pushing to get into the Premier League, because that Championship is one of the most competitive leagues there is. Especially now that the parachute payments are being phased out. There's going to be probably 8 or 9 teams with a realistic chance of winning that league over the next few years. And I'd like to see Lawal in one of those teams to see what he's really got. He looked good last season, and I think one of the commenters mentioned he might be in line to make his debut for Ireland shortly. But he needs to show that he can step up. I liked what I saw of him pre-season over here in Japan. He played a bit in both of those games, and granted they were basically training matches, but he looked the part. So I hope that it's a player that we invest in, and I hope it's a player we put out on loan at a good level and see what he can do, because I think there is potential there for the future, but not as a defender. I think he definitely needs to be midfield from here on out.
Yep, and Charlie Adam will continue to take credit for moving him in there, I'm pretty sure. When we're talking about guys...
He was a midfielder before we signed him.
At Watford?
Yeah. Listen, I think we've got to look in pre-season, the same division Matt Riley come up from. Have a look at pre-season. Get Brendan Roll win the rule over him and see how much he's come on down at Fleetwood, because he looked great down there. And again, that the standards, not the best, but
it's better than the Lowlands League. This is the point, Lawrence.
It might be a bit better than the bottom half of the SPL. There might be actual chances to keep him and give him meaningful minutes up here and develop him. He might have done his loan spell. So I think for him, it's, have a look in pre-season before making a shout on him.
Yeah, but definitely part of the squad. There's no doubt about that. I've named a number of players I would get rid of, and I know it's not going to happen in one window. But the rumblings around Daniel Kelly, Ian, he's a guy that broke through last season. He was one of the kind of breakthrough players under Brendan Rodgers. Looked good from what we've seen. I'm pretty sure you'll agree. But the chat is that we've kind of like delayed the signing talks with him, and as so often happens, other clubs have got a whiff of this, and there's interest from a number of different clubs reportedly. Are we good enough? Simple as that. Are we good enough at doing this with our youth players? Because it seems to be happening time and time again. We had a great discussion on Friday night with Jackie McNamara about it. Obviously, Jackie knows everything about youth development through his time as a player, manager, and CEO within football, and agency work as well. Not as an agent. So I just think that it's one of the things that if we have dragged our heels on Kelly, why? I mean, it's not something. This is the thing, right? With regards to young players, Brendan Rodgers or Ange Postecoglou before him, and go right as far back as Martin O'Neill. I was speaking to Willie McStay at the time, and he spoke about how Martin O'Neill basically said, when it came to youth development, you present me with a player when they're ready for my first team. So these guys are not going out on a Tuesday night or whatever and watching the game after game and a game, and because they are so rammed with their own first team duties, Ian. So they're relying on the structure being in place where somebody comes along and say, right, Ben Doak's ready for the first team. That never happened. That's why we lost him. And the thing with Kelly, right, at some point, probably earlier than it was identified, somebody should be going to Brendan Rodgers, this boy needs tied down on the deal. Do you want to keep him? Because if so, he's got 6 months left, and this is going to start getting. And this again, it seems like history's repeating itself here. We might end up losing a top prospect because we've not been good enough when it comes to looking after the pathway of youth development.
It comes down to that structure, doesn't it? And I think there was always the old joke about all the previous boards about the biscuit tin mentality, and the biscuit mentality always alluded to the financial attitude of the board and the clubs, but I think it's a cultural thing. as much as anything, you know. And I think we for a club our size, we do things in an amateur way, or not in a, you know, Brendan Rodgers. It was attributed to him that when he first came up in his first spell, he was bringing up a Premier League mentality. Don't know about the disco lights, and that was a bit of a bridge too far. But you know, there was that, was it the 5G or 3G grass and all that kind of stuff, and he changed. He was changing things. He was bringing that culture. He just come from Liverpool. That was his last job. So, you know, there was a change, but we've either gone backwards or we haven't developed and built upon that. We've lost quite a few young players, as we all know. Ben Doak, it's debatable whether we could have kept him anyway, you know, when a team like Liverpool comes calling. But I think also as well, with all these sort of £2 million, £3 million type players that we're signing, that's blocking the pathway for youth players to actually get into the first team. Yeah. So that also, you know, if I'm the parent of a young player or an agent, I'm questioning, well, is Celtic the right place to sort of be there and then actually get into the first team? Unless they get loaned out and we start to sort of look. But again, that comes down to the structure. We don't seem to have a real plan. You know, I've got that tie-in with the Austrian team, but it just seems scattergun for me. And I think that's we might get away with it sometimes, the same as we do with some of the signings, but we won't get away with it all the time, and we'll get bitten. And sure as hell we have been before. We have. And the next two in line seem to be, in terms of young players breaking through the first team squads and getting some minutes, Lawrence, Rocco Vata, of course, and Daniel Kelly. And I would want both of them signed up. I think, you know, we're talking about priorities here, the goalkeeper, of course it is. But in terms of looking forward to the kind of medium term, you need to get these guys tied up. They've already had that development where, like Lowell, quite clearly, they're too good for the fifth tier of Scottish football. Last season, I thought Vata should have been loaned out for the entirety of the campaign, get him more games, because he didn't play enough for me in the first team. And whenever he went back to the Lowland League, he was scoring goals. Whenever he represented the Republic of Ireland at any age group, he was scoring goals. He was making an impact, a positive impact. But, you know, back at Celtic, he's sitting on a bench. The biggest slap in the face for me must have been for that kid, Lawrence, when we're 6-0 up against Dundee at home. And he's sitting on the bench and he doesn't get on the park. We know Kelly did. He came on for McGregor and he scores a goal. Vata didn't get on the park. Now, listen, there's maybe people in the comment section have seen a lot more of Vata and Kelly than I have in their progression through the ranks. But they're the next two, aren't they, in the generation of young players coming through, and we need to get them signed up, Lawrence, and if we don't, it will be a concern.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's hard to pick when you sign them. You know, we play in international tournaments. Other clubs get to look at young players. They've got scouts there. They'll be filing reports on every player in that tournament. So players generally have a breakthrough game, don't they, at every level? And if they don't have long enough in their contract, you're in a bit of trouble then. Mm-hmm. Kelly, certainly, when he came on and scored, it looked great this season. Problem is, well, you know, we've kind of missed the boat a bit, haven't we? The power's more with him. There's not long in his contract left now. It's a shame to see him go, but if we keep him, we've got to have a plan for him. When's he going to play? You know, what is a development plan? You know, we were able to do it with Ryan Christie and Christopher Iron. Get their talents, we'll bring them in, we'll loan them out, we'll develop them. And I know we've now got is that pathway manager we call it now? In charge.
No, that's Darren O'Day, isn't it?
Yes, and hopefully he's got kind of a process of saying, right, when they get to this level, you know, they might not be first team ready, but if they're standing out in the reserves or the Crusaders or the under 21s, whatever you want to call them, that's when we need to start looking at teams to get them out and loan. Because does it really matter if we win the reserve league or not? You know, what's the purpose?
I wish we had a reserve league, Lawrence. I wish we had a reserve league.
But you know, does it really matter if they win the league they're in, or is the purpose of them to provide first team players? And if it doesn't matter winning the league, you can afford to halfway through the season get your better players out and loan at a higher level of football. Because it just doesn't really matter if we pick up that trophy or not. Get them out and develop them more. Get them more.
When there's no promotion. When there's no promotion, it doesn't. You're right. It's all about developing the players.
Yeah. I mean, it should only be about developing players. You know, I know some clubs may want to count low league championships amongst their trophy hall.
At least you waited until my coffee was done.
Yeah, but really, it doesn't matter for anything, does it? It's about who we produce for the first team. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, but as you see, right? So you've got this, Barrafield redevelopment, and it's going to cost millions of pounds. You're then seeing, going back to a point Ian made, changes happening behind the scenes that are undoubtedly being influenced by Brendan Rodgers. He said, right, we need a pathway manager. We're not producing enough guys from the youth team. Why not? We're pumping all this money into Barrafield. We need a pathway, and we need somebody to manage that. And that somebody at the moment is Darren O'Day. So you can see that there are changes, but it's like turning the Titanic. When you've been doing things, I'm not going to say badly, but if you've been doing things in a certain way for so long, it's hard and difficult to get them to turn around and change.
Listen, I think we'll get a good record of producing players, just not for our first team. For other first teams, when you look at, Doak, Hepburn, Morrison, Angelini, they're all out there. They're doing well. It's bridging that gap just now. Yeah. And the lack of the reserve league doesn't help. But, Celtic have put in measures to address it. But I think you're right. It won't immediately bear fruit overnight. Dan's not going to be 2 months in the job and all of a sudden go, right, Brendan, I've got 3 guys ready for the first team now. How easy was that? It's going to be a long-term plan. And get back to your talk about kind of the domination under O'Neill. That was probably the thing that the club across the city will never be able to catch up on. Because Fergus came in and said, we might not win it for 5 years, but I'm going to build your stadium. I'm going to put you on a sound financial footing. So Liam's talked about 100-year plan in Japan, but Fergus's 5-year plan didn't promise a trophy. Can you imagine the other side of the city said, look, we really need to catch up in Celtic, but to do that, we're going to have to be run well financially for 5 years. Probably won't win any trophies. I don't think they could stomach that.
That's a good point.
Able to get bored, back Fergus, back to the share issue, and look what it's led to. But that was that the last time he had a solid plan like that? 5-year plan was Fergus's the last one.
Yeah, and part of that plan wasn't to stop 10 in a row. And anyone who worked or was or close to Fergus at the time, be that David Lowe, Jock Brown, they talk about that. Fergus was a Celtic fan. Everybody knows he was, because he was the secretary of the Croy CSC when he was 16. He was running the show, and obviously moved over to Canada, made his millions and all that kind of stuff. But he was just a hard-nosed businessman. So the 10 in a row thing, which meant a lot to us, didn't mean as much to him because it wasn't really part of his plan. He knew that the plan would come to fruition, and by God, it did. Liam, at some point, we're going to have to do a scouting mission over in Japan. It looks as though since Andrew's left the building, we're no longer looking at players over there. Again, going back to what Lawrence said, we need to pull from every resource, surely.
Aye, we do. Actually, I'll take up somebody mentioned in the comments earlier. They were asking, like, how does the transfer system in Japan actually work? And just to kind of give a brief overview, generally clubs in Japan don't sign from each other during the regular season, which runs from about March until November. But if a European team comes in for a player, they let them go. Kyogo signed for Celtic mid-season for Vissel Kobe. And Dyson, the first time he played in Europe, he went to Maritimo in Portugal on loan. I think it was in July of that season. So that, again, mid-season. But the thing is, you can sign players out of Japan pretty much any time. They don't have a transfer window as such. But, and this is the point I'm getting to, the whole thing with Kyogo and this rumour linking him back to Urawa Reds, I just want to put that to bed right now. It's utter nonsense. Urawa Reds do not spend that kind of money, the kind of money they would need to get Kyogo on one player. I mean, they have before, but they don't generally do that. And they don't sign players. If they're going to sign a player from a foreign league, it's usually a Brazilian or some sort of big name, a foreign name. But also, their fans are quite Rangers-like in their political outlook, shall we say? So they're not particularly happy about signing players from abroad at all. That includes Japanese players who played abroad. Strangely enough, They don't tend to sign out with the J League very often. So for a multitude of reasons, I don't think Kyogo would be interested in going back to the J League anyway. But even if he was, Urawa Reds is the last team he would go to. And just for the record, their fans are a shower of fascist filth. I'll just add that as well.
Don't hold back, Liam. We're going to do a bit of a special at some point, Liam and I, on Acsom in relation to maybe the top 5 or 6 players that would do a job for Celtic, because I think our hit rate with our Japanese imports has been pretty high. I mean, even right back to Nakamura. Yeah, for every Nakamura you get a Mizuno, but this time round 4 out of 6 have done really, really well for us. Ideguchi and Kobayashi, the only 2 that haven't really done the business. So a few more comments coming through. Urban Culture, good day, fellow Acsom addicts. Any word on my man Kelleher? At the moment, it's all paper talk, isn't it? But I'm pretty sure that if Liverpool were to let him go, the transfer fee would be pretty sizable. The underwater cabbage salesman. The recruitment of a replacement goalkeeper should be complete by this stage. We have known Joe's contract was up. He spoke about doing that, letting the gaffer know early. Then he retired. The succession plan should have been put in place last summer. And we've also got Gordon Coney. Good afternoon, lads. We've had more links than Richmond sausages. On that note, it's time for lunch almost. What an avatar that is, by the way. Look at that. Who can name all the guys? Right. Back row, Billy McNeil, I'm going to say Mike Jackson, Bertie Auld, Willie Wallace, Tommy Gemmell. Front row, that's Benny Rooney, Jockstein and Willie Fernie. I don't know what the occasion would be. They all look as though they've maybe, in terms of the players, been retired a few years. Any idea, Lawrence, what the occasion would be? Maybe some kind of...
looks as if he'd be manager there, mate. I don't know. So what would it be?
Maybe a testimonial. 78? Maybe his testimonial?
Could
Something
be, mate.
like that. Yeah. Brilliant. Great shot. Fantastic. Anyway, back to the point. Sausages. With goalkeepers, surely one of them will be legitimate and we can get it over the line. I'm sure we will. Absolutely. Brendan Monaghan, always a great pleasure to hear from you. Hail from a rainy day in Ireland.
He's supporting the Sands family over in the fundraising over in Ireland, Brendan. He's doing a concert for them, I think. I saw on social media. Excellent. Yeah, he flies the world, Brendan.
He does.
Famous musician.
Check him out on the socials. Brendan Monaghan, the Bacchus Klaxon. When did that happen? Yeah, it was 2 minutes into the show. Sorry, Henrik McLarson. The Bacchus Klaxon was, what would you say, hit? What would you say? Donged? There you go.
It was silent. We just didn't mention his name. He just said it could be risky.
You didn't you're right. You didn't name him until later. Liam Devine. There's no point spending money for the sake of it. But that said, we should not be trying to bargain basement this one. I agree, Liam. I think we're at that moment of a cycle, if you like. I think that, not maybe to the extent of when you look at the transfer fees we paid in that first season under Martin O'Neill, compared to and as a percentage of our overall turnover, it was a huge percent, Liam. We're not going to do that, but I do think we need to do things differently this time round. Liam Carrigan.
As our income upscales, our expenditure should upscale so that in turn the income will upscale even more. Speculate to accumulate. That's basic economics, right? But I just want to touch on a goalkeeper rumor that I heard today. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. I think he's the third choice keeper at Bayern Munich, Peretz. Now there is the Israel thing, which is what it is. But I would like, if there's any interest at all, there's 2 reasons why I would like this to happen, right? One, puts to bed all this utter garbage in the media about Celtic being in any way anti-Israeli, right? We're not. A section of the fan base are pro-Palestine, which you can be without you. I have never seen anything at Celtic Park that has been overtly anti-Israel. Plenty pro-Palestine. I've never seen it. Leo Abada got a great reception when he came back on after his injury, right? So that's a reason why I think it should go ahead. That deal, if there's anything in it, it should happen. Point 2, as well as being a decent goalkeeper, he's also an Israeli who is going to come and play for Celtic in the current climate, has got a strong character. And we need a big character to replace Joe Hart. It's not just about a good goalkeeper. We need someone who's a big presence and a big personality. And I think an Israeli player who has got the courage and the fortitude to do that, that'll do for me.
I think it's a great point. Because we started off talking about the fact that Hart's character and leadership qualities, Liam, were massive, you know, almost as important as his performances, particularly this season when guys like him had to step up, and they did. Forrest stepped up as well. McGregor, guys with experience, they absolutely pulled us over the line. But yeah, it's a great point, Liam, and we'll see how that develops. Now, before we go, this final question is one for Lawrence Conley. It's from Danny Boy. If you're serving Lawrence 2 pints of Guinness, mate, and one for yourself, is it too early for that?
I don't know if I can get it in, but look what I've just got delivered. I don't know. The old 90s Guinness font.
Oh yeah, something wrong with your pint there, mate. Yeah, that one. I like it. I like it. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll continue throughout the pre-season to go live at 12:30 every single weekday. We'll be covering all the friendlies, and we'll also cover the Scotland games because we've got 4 Celts who might be appearing in those matches as well, and a few ex-Celts as well in the mix. So we'll be covering the Scotland games. Thanks everybody for getting involved. We are going to be live with Jackie McNamara, Stan Petrov, and Alan Thompson 3 weeks on Friday. It's in Glasgow, a brilliant venue called Barra's Art and Design, who now sponsor the channel. And that's where we film our Friday night show. Tickets available under this video. 25 quid for the 3 boys from Seville. We'll be talking about that and everything else because they were at the start of this period of domination. And I'm really looking forward to that. I've got to say, brilliant crowd in today. Thanks everybody for getting involved in the comments. And thank you to Ian Conroy, Liam
Can I just say,
yes.
Sorry to put in, mate. Can I just wish my son Malky a happy 12th birthday today? Shout out to him. And it was his brother Seamus's 10th birthday 3 weeks ago, so I wasn't on then. So sorry for the shameless plug, but they'll watch this and be happy.
Happy birthday, boys.
Happy birthday, boys. Right. Absolutely. Nice one. And Lawrence, get the pints pulled as well. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Join us again tomorrow at 12:30 for a Celtic State of Mind.